Hey everyone, Synchrony here. I am extremely excited to chat with you all today. As always, I'm bringing some new information to light about Guild Wars lore, and in particular the living story. My focus is pretty much always on the living story, but, sometimes to predict the future, you have to look back to the past. And to learn about the past, I get a ton of information from the wiki. If you've seen my videos, then you know I go deep on some of this lore. I get good use out of the wiki. It's a phenomenal tool if you're interested in learning a bit about the lore, especially for me. I never played Guild Wars 1, so the wiki has been just so valuable to me as I put together some of these ideas. But what I try to do here is really look at the lore from multiple perspectives and find where all the pieces of evidence kind of converge, where they all meet up and give a solid explanation of what's going on. And wow, people, what I have for you today will seriously blow your mind. At least I hope it does, because it really surprised me. Today is all about reactors. I'm going to talk about the magical origins of the Thaumanova reactor and all other reactors. There's more than one? Yeah, and through this, I believe I showed definitively that Scarlet has built her own reactor. In my past videos, I make a huge deal about this, but it's only been speculation so far. I elaborate a lot more on this reactor stuff in previous videos, so if you enjoyed this video/podcast, I think you'll really like my previous videos as well, so, check those out. So in doing all this research about reactors, my initial interest was in the Thaumanova reactor. If you see my past videos, then I put a lot of emphasis on the Thaumanova reactor. I've linked its energy sources to Scarlet in different ways, but I still wasn't satisfied with the explanation. This is mainly because we have this strange empty space in the Guild Wars 2 map between the Thaumacore energy source in the Toxel Bog and the reactor itself. What's in that empty space? Well, I pretty much obsessed over it, and since the Guild Wars 2 map and wiki don't really tell me anything, I had to look at Guild Wars 1 lore. So like I said, I use the wiki a lot, and I haven't played Guild Wars 1. So as I search the wiki, I use a giant Guild Wars 1 map to just get my bearings and get a sense of where all these past events happened. What I then started doing is cross-referencing some of these places and events to my Guild Wars 2 map, seeing if anything cool is there now. In a few hundred years, some places change. Some were sunk in the sea, other places flourished. Some land was developed, while other land was overrun by vegetation and trees, stuff like that. Anyways, most quests and locations from Guild Wars 1 don't have a functional significance in Guild Wars 2, in terms of living story speculation. That is, for example, a small camp in Guild Wars 1 that got raided by bandits probably doesn't mean anything now. But sometimes you come across something really special. Okay, where to start? So some quick recap about the Thaumanova reactor and the origins of its power. We know the power comes from the husks in the Toxel Bog and the Brisbane Wildlands. I've said this many times, and it's presented pretty plainly in the game. These husks are remnants of treant spirits that have left their physical form, and the husks are the leftovers of that process. The husks in the bog are sapped by the Inquest at the nearby Thaumacore Inquiry Center, where the energy is refined and developed into Thaumacores. These are what power the reactor. But the husks, we don't know what actually petrified them that way. If it was voluntary or something else put them in that petrified state. It's an unknown that we just have to accept. So if we are asked what the source of the Thaumanova reactor's power is, we would likely say that it's the husks and leave it at that. There's another reactor, It doesn't get much press because it hasn't blown up yet, but it's still a big deal. I'm talking about the Infinite Coil reactor in Mount Maelstrom. This reactor is what houses the Crucible of Eternity dungeon, so you've probably done that before, maybe not. So you're familiar at least with the location and kind of the setup of the facility. It's another reactor. At this facility, the Inquest run tests on different creatures from around Tyria, trying to harness Elder Dragon magic so that they can rule over the other factions of the world. Now, they have husks here too, but a different variety. And it's unclear if this is the primary energy source of the Infinite Coil reactor. We don't know. Chronologically, the Thaumanova reactor was built first, It blew up, so the Inquest moved and built the infinite coil. That's just a recap about the official reactors that we know of. We think we have a sense of where their energy comes from, but I'm starting to have some serious doubts. This is where we get into the crazy stuff that you came here to listen to. As always, hold on to your butts, because here we go. I'm going to gloss over some of the details here in this lore kind of review, because I just don't know the well lore enough. A lot of this stuff is going to be Guild Wars 1 related, so I leave it to the true Guild Wars historians to help me and elaborate on some of the nuances of the quests and the storylines. Okay, we're traveling back 250 years ago to Guild Wars prophecies. I don't want to dive too much into the extraneous lore, first because I just don't know enough details, like I said, but also because I don't want to draw attention from the topic at hand, and I feel like introducing a bunch of seemingly random lore will just kind of open a can of worms, without much resolution. I do, however, need to give some backstory. So the short story is that the Undead Lich, the same guy who destroyed Ore, causing a tidal wave that sunk the surrounding areas of the Sea of Sorrows, including Old Lion's Arch. The Lion's Arch we have is the second iteration, if you didn't know. Anyways, that same guy came into possession of a special scepter, the Scepter of Ore, which allowed him to send titans from the underworld into the mortal realm to destroy Tyria. Okay, so this guy was trying to send these titans, these massive monsters, to destroy Tyria. About the titans. My understanding is that the titans essentially come out as a blank slate, but adapt to the environment. So if it's let loose in a volcano, for example, it takes on fire element properties. You can check out the wiki entry on them for more information. Importantly, titans are minions of Abaddon. I just said the Lich summoned them, but it's Abaddon who essentially creates them. Titans take on Abaddon's key feature, the 6 eyes. Yes, 6 eyes, but don't get ahead of yourself, we'll get back to that. So, in order to destroy Tyria, the Lich begins a ritual to open portals to release his Titan armies. In Guild Wars 1, the heroes are able to stop this ritual, but not before some Titans make it out. You then go on a series of quests to defend 3 specific locations from the Titans. This is the important part, the reason for the video. In cross-referencing the maps from Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, I found a peculiar and fascinating pattern. Let's examine this. The Titans were sent to attack 3 locations. The regions were the Henge of Denravi, Droknar's Forge, and a region simply called North Kryta Province. Let's start with Henge of Denravi. Fortunately, this site exists on our Guild Wars map, our Guild Wars 2 map. It's in the Brisbane Wildlands, and wouldn't you know, in the Toxel Bog. Only now it's called the Shattered Henge. Well, in Guild Wars 1, this map used to reach further south, so that mountain range that we see here hasn't always been there. Anyways, consider that the Titan armies were fought and defeated just below the Henge, in that blank space where we can't get to. That event bridges the energy source in the Toxel Bog to the Thaumanova reactor. I mean, imagine if the map boundaries weren't there. That would be a clear connection to me. Wow, Synchrony, is this really what you call this in for? A battle against the Titan army happened here? So what? Just a coincidence, it doesn't mean anything to the reactors, whatever. Okay, viewer/listener, that is fair. This coincidence does not necessarily link reactor locations with Titan battles. But, ! Consider the next Titan battle, at Droknar's Forge, in the Shiver Peaks. We had to defend this area from Titans as well. If we compare the Guild Wars 1 map to our current map, we see that this location has now turned into the Infinite Coil Reactor. 2 for 2. Nice. To me, that is officially more than just a coincidence. But there were 3 battles, and only 2 reactors. So how do you explain that? Ooh, this is the fun part. We only know about 2 reactors, don't we? The Thaumanova and the Infinite Coil. So, let's say I wanted to build a 3rd reactor. If the location of Titan battles was a predictor of reactor location, for whatever reason, we don't know. If that's true, we don't know why. But if the location of Titan battles was the predictor of reactor location, then where should I expect to see this third reactor? This young little settlement of North Kryta province, where the final attack happened, is now lovingly known as Gendaran Fields. Luckily, we have some persistent landmarks to compare the maps. Look at the water's edge here. Follow it down. This is where the Titan battle happened. And what's this place now? The Aether Blade jumping puzzle. I am saying that this Aether Blade facility is actually a reactor. A few months ago, it wasn't. A few months ago, it was just a rock formation for all we know. We don't actually know what happened when it was built, but it probably hasn't been there long. You know, in truth, this spot could simply be a source of energy for the reactor, and the actual reactor could be that blank spot in the map that we don't know about, kind of to the left of Lion's Arch. I considered that the secret hideout inside Lion's Arch as a reactor, but none of the rooms or mobs really fit the theme of a reactor here. It's hard to say what's exactly going on in the jumping puzzle. Also, it's bugged right now. If you want to get in, I used the, Asuran experimental teleportation gun that you get, I think it's in Timberline Falls at one of the labs. I use that as a proxy for that leap cog thing that lets you jump across really far. You can get in with the Asuran teleportation gun, and no big deal. I tried looking around, taking pictures. I couldn't find anything very telling, so I'm not sure. But I can imagine a future update adding a sort of vertical fork in the road once you get in. For example, if you want to do the puzzle, you continue above ground. If you want to take on the reactor, you go below ground, something like that. So, the locations of Titan battles 250 years ago are the exact locations of Inquest and Scarlet reactors now. This is why I call the video Scarlet's Reactor and the Titan Graveyards. I can imagine that after the battles, the Titan's power was essentially absorbed by the environment around it, enriching that part of the land with immense amount of magic. But what does it all mean? Titans created by Abaddon and released by the Lich. Where exactly does their magical energy come from? I honestly don't know. It would be helpful to know about Abaddon's and Lich's motivations for the Titan release. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a clear answer. All I found was to destroy Tyria. That was their motive. Like, what they wanted to do was destroy Tyria, which isn't really a valid answer for me. Why attack those specific sites? Again, unknown. Maybe because they were major sort of hubs of Tyria, so that's why they were attacked. I'm calling out to all the Guild Wars 1 players and lore historians to chime in and try to fill in those blanks. I think, to me, it's very, very clear that there's a connection, but Titans, like, what is that about? I'm not sure. A lot of people have mentioned Titans as something that Scarlet is associated with. We're just not sure just yet. Alright, so I've now established that a third reactor exists, and that if we follow the sites of the Titan attacks, it should be exactly at the Aether Blade jumping puzzle facility. And as I just said, it's hard to pin down exactly why these sites are important historically. But at least we can start answering some questions and clarifying some of the things that we've seen in the modern age of the game, and what might be in store for future Living Story updates. First, the Thaumanova reactor. I made a big deal about this reactor in my last video. Specifically, I described Scarlet's fascination with the eternal alchemy, and how the blast from the Thaumanova reactor was an insight as to how she could harness the eternal alchemy. Beyond that, I put a lot of emphasis on chaotic residue that the Thaumanova explosion left behind, and how that led to a sort of accelerated evolution in the local script, and how this process could be what Scarlet is using to evolve the Crate and the Nightmare Court defectors and the Toxic Hybrid in the most recent patch. Around the Thaumanova reactor, that chaotic residue warps in Chaos Beasts with 6 eyes. Why does a Chaos Beast look identical to a Nightmare Shade? Well, if I understand this correctly, when Abaddon died, he essentially released his essence in the form of Chaos Magic. So back to the Chaos Residue, its relation to Abaddon and its transformative abilities, I used this fact to explain why the Toxic Hybrid had 6 eyes. The Chaos Magic was evolving it into something more chaotic, and thus it was beginning to look like a Chaos Beast, which has indirect influences of Abaddon. It's unclear if the evolutionary process is what's actually happening, but now let's look at the toxic hybrid through the light of these Titan attacks. The 6 sides of the hybrid and the 6 sides of the Titans. That's the easy comparison. You know, when we first saw the image of the hybrid on the preview page, everyone kept, a bunch of people came out and said, oh, Abaddon this, Abaddon that, Titans, all this stuff. And it seemed like a stretch because, I mean, to go essentially a year with all these alliances and then just now, at the end of a year, introduce elements of Abaddon, that just seemed like, oh my god, that whole thing about opening a can of worms, just making it so convoluted and detailed, hard to follow. I felt like that couldn't really be a viable route that they were taking this story. But certainly influences of Abaddon could come out. I mentioned in my last video that, again, that chaos magic that we see at the Thaumanova reactor is what Scarlet is trying to harness. Through a controlled release of chaotic magic, she could essentially evolve creatures, as I claimed that she did with the crate, with the Nightmare Defectors, the toxic hybrid, and as you infuse these creatures over time with chaotic magic, they become more Abaddon-like, let's say, and that's what we see in the hybrid. It's sort of the next stage of evolution, where these creatures have enough chaotic magic where they get even more Abaddon-like, in a sense. Not necessarily that she's trying to bring out Abaddon or anything like that, but just that's the nature of the magic. If the chaos magic came from Abaddon, then it makes sense that creatures infused with that magic will take on some of his qualities, and just by far the most distinguishing quality of Abaddon is the 6 eyes. But I've seen some really interesting theories online on the official lore forums on Reddit that what Scarlet is trying to do is not just evolve or mutate a given creature, but to merge creatures, to find the right combination of creatures for something. Like, we never know what that end goal is, but she's trying to create these hybrids, trying to merge these creatures into something. You know, we think of the hybrid as like, oh my gosh, this is the first case in which she has kind of combined 2 species together. But in the first level, as soon as you enter the Nightmare Tower, on that first level, you encounter, I think it's a veteran husk, but it's called a fire-touched husk. So it's not just a toxic husk, but it has elements of the Molten Alliance infused into it. So that's also, to me, a clue that she's experimenting with different mergings, different fusions, different splicing of the alliances of the creatures, trying to find just the right one. Now, that's not my original idea. I wish I could remember everyone's, forum name or Reddit name to give credit. That's sort of something that I picked up out there. That she's trying to fuse different species, different alliances to find something. What is she trying to find? Not really sure. But when she releases the hybrid, one of the primary mechanics or properties of the hybrid is that it evolves rapidly. So that element of evolution is there. But why do you need something to evolve rapidly? That once I came to this kind of connection of the reactors and the Titan battles, Titan graveyards, let's call it, I started thinking about that hybrid. The hybrid is taking on some of the properties of a Titan, where it evolves rapidly. The Titan, you can put it anywhere and it will adapt immediately. It will evolve to fit the context of its environment. And I think maybe it's a plausible hypothesis of what's going to happen is that she's trying to find just the right combination of species, just the right combination of these different creatures to sort of build her own Titan. The thing that we always come down to is why. Why is she doing that? The thing about the Titans, or, building her own Titan, is that it just doesn't really fit with what we know or what we think we know about Scarlet so far. Like, in pretty much every reasonable theory that I've seen about Scarlet, it's all about getting back to the pale tree, deconstructing that pale tree, breaking it down, undermining the pale tree, and whatever the pale tree represents. That could be good or evil. There's controversy on that. I reject the theories or the hypotheses that, oh, they just make Scarlet bad to be bad. No, that doesn't work. So it's really hard, for me at least, to tie the Titans back to Scarlet's end game, what her end goal is. So if anyone has ideas on that, leave a comment. I really want to know. This is one of the things where I'm kind of lost and not sure about. So on that note about Scarlet making Titans, why is she gathering all the alliances? Why is she building all the alliances? Well, consider also that all the alliances taken together essentially represent beings from all different kind of elements. You have the Crate from the water, the Nightmare Court Sylvari for plant-based, and the Husks for plants. If she's able to kind of fuse all of these together, merge all of these together, maybe she'll come out with a Titan that can adapt to anything on the fly, and that will be kind of her creation. But it just seems, I don't know, it seems almost lackluster to me. Like, all this work, all these plans, all this time, all this effort, for what? To build a Titan or to build an army of Titans? That just seems so blah, like with all that, with your genius, all that work that you've done, even your intermediate steps leading up to this, you could have seized a better moment. I had a theory. My last video was a theory of how she would use the tree to spread chaos magic through the spores that were let out. That seems more diabolical to me than Build-A-Bear Titan fused thing. I don't know, it just seems like not very good. But that's not what we're talking about here necessarily. We're talking about how the Titans are the basis for the reactors. So I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming fractal that's coming up. It's the origins of the Thaumanova reactor. I think that's really, really, really cool. I'm really excited to see that, and also really excited to see the origins of the Aether Blades. Remember that fractals can only go back in time. They don't go in the future. So when you go in a fractal, you experience history of something. So I think for the Thaumanova reactor, really it's about what happened to the Thaumanova reactor. So I think it's going to be established. There's going to be a working Thaumanova reactor. We can go in, check it out. It'll probably right in the midst of all the chaos, all the destruction, whatever happened at the Thaumanova reactor, we're going to be right in the heart of it, and that's going to be awesome. I'm really, really, really excited for that. It's going to be amazing. But I wonder if maybe we'll see some mention of Titans there. Something. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm really excited for it. But also, since they're showing some of the history of the Aether Blades, maybe we'll see something with that facility as well. Considering that I'm saying the Aether Blades have a reactor, and remember that the Aether Blades are made up partly from Inquest members, so maybe they found something there. Maybe the Fractal will document how they came across their reactor. I don't know. It's going to be really cool. Check that out. So it doesn't really look like Titans are going to be part of the Thaumanova fractal, I don't think. There's probably not even going to be mention of them. But consider the other fractal we were going to get, the Fall of Abaddon. I think that would have really contributed a lot of information that would have really helped out here. I think maybe with that one, maybe we'll see mention of Titans. I've been mentioning on different forums and stuff like that, and having conversations with people about how the choices in that fractal, the Fall of Abaddon or Thaumanova reactor, we're probably gonna tell two different perspectives of the same event, or regarding the same kind of topic. And I think this would be a really interesting way to do that, where you have the Thaumanova reactor, how did it blow up, kind of the origins and the catastrophe that happened there, just in the Thaumanova reactor sense, the kind of more present day, and then the history of it, which was, in a certain sense, the Fall of Abaddon, and then what happened after the Fall of Abaddon. I mentioned there were 3 Titan attacks in Tyria. Well, I kind of lied there. There were technically 4. There was a kind of a collection of 3 quests that you had to do. One was Denravi, Draknar, and Gandharan Fields, whatever. there were those. But then after you do those, you go to the final Titan fight in Ascalon. I'm not going to say too much about it, but the site of the final Titan fight it overlaps in the modern day with the Lowland Burns waypoint. And what happens at Lowland Burns? That's where you fight the Shatterer. So, I don't know if that means anything. I didn't want to make that a main point of the video, but that is something. So, the area where we fought the Titans is where we fight the Shatterer. That's where the Shatterer decides to land and fight us. So, maybe that means something, maybe not. Our dragons, consider that the Inquest studied dragon energy. One thing I wanted to bring up was, is it the case that there's Titan energy there, and so the Inquest think they're studying dragons when they're actually studying Titan remains? Or is it that, given that the Shatterer lands in the spot of that final Titan fight, is it that the dragons are drawn to the magical properties of the Titan battles, and so the Inquest happen to set up bases there to study that? I don't know. That part is totally, I just have no idea. If you have ideas, leave comments. Anyways, guys, the real point of the video was just to point out that really neat, really incredible overlap between areas of Titan influence and the reactors. And there seems to be a really, really important connection there, but we just don't know what it is. We don't know enough about Titans. We don't know enough about reactors. Hopefully the fractals will clear that up, and we'll see what happens. If you were surprised by this, say it in the comments. I think it was just such a neat thing. If you weren't surprised, if you knew already, leave that in the comments as well. Anyways, I will see you guys next time. Thanks again for watching. See you later. Bye.